freakish abilities of Glenn Phillips kept New Zealand in the hunt very briefly, or rather kept New Zealand in the hunt very briefly, but England looked in charge for most of that game, won the toss, batted first, put a decent total on the board, and then just kept New Zealand at arm's length throughout their run chase. 179 for 6, played 159 for 6, 20 runs, convincing enough. England needed the 2 points desperately, much more than New Zealand did. And now we have the scenario looming of 3 teams possibly on 7 points jointly, and it'll all come down to net run rate, where both England and New Zealand are superior over the host nation, Australia. We'll talk more about that on Cricbuzz Live, where I'm joined by Joy Bhattacharjya and Michael Vaughan. Michael, I'll come to you first. If anyone would have been a little bit nervous seeing England go out, but I think you were very clear in your assessment. If England couldn't defend those number of runs, they didn't deserve to be in the semis. They've done so.
Yeah, really good display by England. I thought they were back to the England that we know with the bat. Got a good score on the board, and I have confidence in this bowling attack. I just think it's got so many options. Sam Curran, who's had another great day out, he's just brought a different dimension to England's death bowling. You only have to go back a year ago where it was England's death bowling that kicked them out of the World Cup against New Zealand in the semi-final in Abu Dhabi. They got hit to all parts at the end. Well, today it was the death bowling that really won them the game in the end. But I never ever felt, I don't know what Joy thinks, I never felt that New Zealand were on top of that chase. I never felt that they were really confident of chasing down that number. I always felt they were always behind, and that was down to the start. Good option to use spin early by Josh Buttler. The partnership, obviously, of Phillips and Williamson got them to within touching range in terms of striking towards the back end. But I just wonder, Kane Williamson's a great player, fantastic cricketer, but I just don't know if you can have that style of player at free tune up so many balls. I just think it puts the rest of them under so much pressure. You're basically relying on a Mitchell kind of performance like we saw in the semi-final last year in Abu Dhabi. I just don't think you can rely on that kind of impact and that kind of innings to win you a game of cricket when you're only chasing a score of 180. I just think Kane of 40 from 40, 100% strike rate looks nice. I just think he's got to go up in the gears that little bit sooner.
And if you look closely at that as well, Joy, he's actually faced the most number of balls in the entire innings. Phillips' 62 has come from 36. So he's used up 40 balls. Maybe a start, 10 of 10 to start with is fine. But as Michael said, he had to go up that gear. The other Kane plus 20%, as we said on Cricbuzz Combox, had to come. The 20% never came.
Yeah, absolutely. You're taken, if you look at it, 120 balls, 40 is exactly 1/3 of 120. So 33.33% of the balls you've taken to score less than 23% of the runs. So the moment that disparity is there, then everyone else is trying to cover up. And I think I was just looking back at that place at the batting card and saying, where was the closest that New Zealand got to a sniff? And I think that's that 14th over where Adil Rashid bowled, Glenn Phillips hit 2 towering sixes, 101 meter 6. I think that was the point, that 11.4. That was the point at which they really threatened. That 14th over, they finished, they really threatened. Next over, and this is what we talk about champions. Ben Stokes has not much to do with the bat. He's come in late. He walks in there, gets the ball in his hand, and he gets a wicket immediately. And whatever happens, even though it's Williamson's wicket, it changes the momentum of the game. And I think that's why, people like Ben Stokes are such charismatic characters for their team. Because they might not do it with the ball. Someday they'll do it with the bat. Someday they'll do it with the ball. Someday they'll do it in the field. Somewhere they find a way to contribute. And after that, if you look at it from there on, that over from Ben Stokes, then Mark Wood comes back, takes a wicket. The next 4 overs, every over they get a wicket. And therefore, never after that does the momentum keep going. And that's where you see 11.4 to 7.2, that's the story of the match.
Yeah, Michael, I know you were talking a lot about Adil Rashid and whether he'd not come to the party or not. But I think as a bowling unit, they compensated for the fact that if there was one weak over in that sense, or one over where New Zealand threatened, it was the over where he got hit for a couple of sixes. But it didn't really matter because at the other end, there was Sam Curran, there was Ben Stokes with that crucial wicket. And overall, as a unit, they rocked up.
Yeah, I mean, Adil got thrown the ball for that. His first 3 overs were excellent. He built pressure, and he should have had Phillips out. That after laughed. I've dropped many dollars in my time, but Mo, enjoying the club, that's one of mine. So he should have had the key wicket early, and then obviously Phillips was going to target that short side and that 4th over that he bowled, and that's when I felt that the momentum has changed. But I just feel that with a Kane style player chasing 180, well, I think that 40 balls that he faced he's got to be getting 55, 58, something like that. He can't be getting 40 off 40 in a chase of 180. He's got to go up in the gears that little bit sooner. He's such a good player. If you face 20 odd balls, you've then got to have the game to be able to strike the boundaries. Facing spinning those middle overs, you have to have the ability to put fear into the spinner by thinking, wait a minute, I'm running up to the ball. Where's it going to go? Is it going to go into the stand? Which are the boundaries that the batter's going to try and target? I never ever felt when Kane was facing the spinner that he was looking for the boundary. I always felt it was like just nurdling, and all the spinners love that. They love just facing a batter that's just looking to nurdle. They hate bowling to batters that they think they can hit out the ground, and that's 2020 cricket. That's the modern game. You know, if it's a 140 kind of pitch and it's doing all sorts, you need a Kane Williamson style player, and 40 off 40 can win you a game. When you're chasing 180. You know, I think it costs you when you chew up 40 balls and only return 40 runs. I think that's asking too much of the remaining of the batting lineup.
Yeah, and even the mathematics as you were doing it, Joy, if you just add those 15 runs or 18 runs that Michael mentioned, which isn't too much of an ask, if he's 55 or 40, you're already talking about being within 5 runs of the target. And if you get out, so be it. You hand over the baton to someone else. Devon Conway didn't perform, but he didn't use up balls.
You know, and I think, to be honest with you, I really like Kane Williamson. But I think he gets an awfully long leash on this from experts, analysts, commentators, everybody. He gets a long leash because everyone likes him as a character. But he's simply not playing. You know, for a match like this, I would have been far happier had Kane Williamson run at one of the spinners, got himself out, whatever, given his team a chance. He never looked as if he was threatening the spinners at all. And what do spinners like? Exactly as Michael said, they like to settle into a length. They like to be able to pitch it, not thinking, wondering whether you'll run down the pitch and hit them over their heads. And they knew that with Kane Williamson, they didn't. And when he goes out also, he tries to do something stupid, tries to steer, strokes over slips. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, that he never gave the bowlers any fear. So all the running had to be done by Ken Phillips.
And his first, I mean, out of 39 balls, he had 3 boundaries. He had 36 balls. Yeah, and when he tried to finally play a shot, as you said, either running at a spinner or do something different, that's the ball he got out. Yeah. Could have been 20 balls earlier. But that's for another day. But just to stay on someone like Sam Curran, who's now the joint leading wicket taker in the tournament, and he's certainly made an impact now that England have the 5 points on the board, looking to make it 7 against Sri Lanka in Sydney, and then we'll have quite a spicy scenario in terms of those 3 teams up front. Australia will be the ones who will be challenging the most. They need a huge victory, and they'll need to hope for another result to go their way, or at least for a team like Sri Lanka to push England. But for the moment, let's stick with Sam Curran. You've been talking him up a lot, Michael, but I think just the performance that he showed today doesn't always have to come in terms of a bushel full of wickets, but overall the impact he's causing, the stages at the innings he's bowling, always at the critical points.
Yeah, he's that kind of character. His brother Tom's exactly the same. They just like the confrontation, the battle, the pressure moments in the game. They always want to be out there when the pressure's on. It's a great mentality to have, and that's why he's so sought after in many of these leagues around the world. That's why teams pay a huge amount of money for him, because he is a 3-dimensional player. He's a good fielder. With his bowling, he can bowl pretty much all across the 20 overs, and with the bat, he's obviously very, very dangerous down the bottom end. He can strike the sixes, so he's a tremendous cricketer. But what he's brought to England's death bowling is something that they haven't had for a while. We were reliant on Chris Jordan for a long time, bowling those Yorkers. He was good at times, but also he just lost his kind of confidence and missed his zones on many occasions as well. But Sam just seems to have found confidence bowling at the back end, and that's what it is. At the end of innings, you're going to get attacked. You're going to have to accept that the odd ball's going to fly out the ground, but it's how you cope with that mentally. And it's important that you have days like Sam's had today and in the last few games where he's had success, because you just believe that you can do it. You believe that every time you get the ball in hand, you're going to deliver the skill. You're going to deliver the wide Yorker. You're going to deliver that bouncer at the right time. You're going to deliver that straight Yorker at the right time. And what he's very, very clever at, he leaves his decision till the last minute. You'll see him run up and he'll watch the batter. He has an idea where he's going to bowl, but then he'll see the batter do something and he'll just bowl a different variation because he's seen the batter either move leg side, he'll throw it wider at the off stump. He'll see a batter coming at him, so he bowls that sharp bouncer. And then he's obviously got the ability to bowl the slow ball bouncer as well. Seems to always have good field set. So him and Joss are working well as a combination in getting the tactical side of the field settings right. But he's just got that mojo. I'll say mojo once again. He's got the mojo to wanting to be there when the pressure zone is on. and there's only a small amount of players that really, really want the ball in the hand when the pressure's on. There's not many that go, I'll bowl. I've got Glenn Phillips that's looking to hit me out the ground, and all these great power hitters. Well, I'll say little Sam, he's only tiny. He punches miles above his height. He's got strong shoulders. He gets that chest out, and he wants to be there when it's really, really mattering for the team. And he's producing the goods on a regular basis now. And I just think England's death bowling is so much better now because of the left arm angle that he's creating.
And we talked about the different stages of the innings. 5, 13, 18 and 20 was what he bowled. 5th over, he gets Finn Allen. 13th over, Glenn Phillips is coming hard. He doesn't concede a boundary. 18th over, he gets Glenn Phillips out. 20th, it's all over anyway.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You look at those overs and you'll see the similarity between the overs he got and the overs Hasaranga got. That means every time the captain felt that they were in trouble, they needed something, he turns to Sam Curran. And you see, there's a bit of a problem out here because what happened with them is they start with Moeen Ali because they know that, and Moeen was looking good, but after that, Neesham didn't bat, so there's a whole lot of right-handers. Still Phillips was there. They couldn't risk Moeen Ali, which meant that they had to get more overs out of Livingston. Livingston gave them something. I think this is the beauty of England, that Moeen Ali just gets 1 over. Adil Rashid has not done well. This hasn't been a great match for him. And yet this bowling, because they have such a wealth of bowlers, this bowling unit has got together and done something. Ben Stokes gave them a wicket. Liam Livingston gives them 3 overs, 26. They'll take that from a 4th bowler, a 5th bowler, or a 6th bowler anytime. And I think they put it together. And I think that's the beauty of England.
To be fair, as Michael pointed out, we were just looking at Adil Rashid's figures in isolation. Take out that last over. If Moeen holds on to that dolly, which he would 99 times out of 100, then I think his figures change completely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that wicket would have changed. That it would have been probably a 40-run defeat instead of a 20-run defeat. Because after that is when the big sixes start getting hit. But that's what I'm saying. This game depends so much on situations like that. But the advantage England has is they have so many weapons to go to. I mean, think of your 7th bowler and you have Ben Stokes to throw the ball to. That's where England has an advantage. They have 9 batsmen. They have 7 to 8 bowlers. And as the tournament goes on, those are going to be increasingly advantages for the English team. Joss Butler's got into form. This is now a dangerous English team.
But in terms of New Zealand, all is not lost. In fact, not very much is lost. They very much will be a very strong semi-final contender. They've got a game left against Ireland in Adelaide in a few days' time. They just need to win that and they're through. And at least in terms of net run rate, they're safe. And one of the reasons why they're so strongly placed, they had a great start to the tournament, defeating Australia. And then with Glenn Phillips, when they were not in the greatest of shape, coming up with 100 and following that up with the innings today of 60 plus. So the form of Glenn Phillips going into the back end of a tournament, going into a knockout game, obviously Kane Williamson will be a talking point. I think this is a huge Phillip. I didn't do that intentionally, but it came out at the right time. It was meant to.
A Phillip from Phillip, yeah, absolutely, No, absolutely. But I was just thinking of one more thing. The only thing that could upset the New Zealand apple cart is their games get rained out, and the other 2 happen. So England reach on 7, Australia reach 7, and their game against Ireland, I think Ireland it is, right?
Yes, it is.
Match gets rained out. If that happens, then those 2 go through.
Well, I'll just add a rider to that. I think they're playing in the same day at the same venue as Australia play Afghanistan, back to back.
Correct.
So it means that if there's that much rain to wash out a game in the afternoon, the Australia game will probably also get washed out. So in that
there's all sorts of things. But think about it. I mean, stranger things have happened in this World Cup. I mean, the 20th over that Pakistan bowled to India is the strangest over I can remember in a long, long time. So so that's the only thing that will be worrying them. They will be having a few looks at the weather and hoping that, let it stay away. Let things remain as they are.
But Michael, I mean, at least New Zealand going into a knockout game, let's assume that rain doesn't play a part again. Assume they're in the semi-finals. We don't know who they'll play. It could possibly be India. The form of someone like Glenn Phillips compensates to a certain extent of the lack of strike rate from someone like a Kane Williamson. But they'd really want a combination of that to fire if possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing brilliantly. Obviously, the 100 the previous game and a nice 50 tonight. I mean, I will say he's had a bit of fortune as well on both occasions. And I don't think New Zealand can win this World Cup without more contributions from around him. I do think they're going to need more contributions. You can't just be reliant on one power hitter in the middle. What happens if that catch gets taken? in the previous game, the catch by Mo and Ali tonight. They're going to need someone else to step up. Yes, they've got Mitchell. Yes, they've got Neesham, Sant. They've got some real good hitters down that bottom end. But I just think that top three's got to fire. I mean, the first game against Australia, they came out of the traps and they were magnificent. They came out with real intent. And it only takes a couple of low scores, which both Finn Allen, Devin Conway have had now, to just sow that seed of doubt in your mind in T20 cricket. They've got to clear that to one side and go back to that first game, that first kind of mentality of what they did. They went out and beat ultra aggressive against Australia. I keep saying it in T20 cricket. It's not a format where you can play yourself back into form. It's a format where you have to free up your mind and you have to stare at the ball and think boundaries. You think boundaries, all right, I can't get a boundary right, I'll knock it into the space for ones and twos and make sure I'm rotating the strike. And that's what the real quality players do when they're playing well. And that's what that combination of the top has to get back to doing. I love the fact that England bowls spin to Devon Conway at the front. I think that'll be something that most teams will try and do now, particularly on wickets that we might see. Adelaide might turn. Historically, it turns a little bit more there. I know they're more dropping wickets now and they probably don't spin as much as the old days, but there'll certainly be a bit of grabbing the surface. So I think they'll probably have one or two kind of matchups that they've seen in the last couple of games that they'll see going forward. But New Zealand are going to have to need more from that batting lineup. They can't just be reliant on Phillips. They need more from the whole unit, and particularly that pair at the top. And the skipper's just got to, he's in third gear at the minute. He's just got to go, however the noise is that you change gear, he's just got to get into fifth gear that little bit sooner.
But interesting, he should use a phrase like stare at the ball and get the runs, because Glenn Phillips has a routine every single time before he goes out to bat. And I noticed it when he scored his first T20 100 in the West Indies. I was sitting 10 feet away and he actually puts the ball in front of his eyes and he has a full routine before he walks out. He stares at it, and when he's ready to bat, he puts it down and walks out.
Oh, fascinating. No, but I just love him as a player. And it's interesting that, I think Glenn Phillips will also be telling Kane that, I'm doing this for you for New Zealand. I'm not going to do it for you for SRH, because, they play in the same team as well in the Premier League.
But is it blasphemous to even suggest the possibility of Kane Williamson being rested for a Martin Guptill? I'm going to throw it at both of you.
If you ask me, I'll start, because I'll give Michael a little more time. If there's any team in the world who can take as gutsy a decision like that, it is New Zealand, because New Zealand has always been about the team being bigger than the personality. And if there's any captain who would accept it with equanimity and walk off and say, look, I'm not doing enough for the team, let's try it. It is to be Ken Williamson. So if any team could try that, they would. I'm not sure they would, but, who knows? Stranger things have been known to happen. The other thing is that if you try that against Ireland, okay, they play Ireland, right, and it happens, it works for them, then, it's not Ireland. If you have to try something in a game, I'd probably think Ireland is the kind of opponents where you have a better chance. You don't want to try that against India or teams like that, or against Australia or in England. Perhaps you look at it.
Michael, you didn't seem as if you approved when I first said it.
No, look, it's a fair point. But I just think he's got to play better. He's got to play with more aggression. He's an outstanding player. He's brilliant. We've seen it in the past where he's got his strike rate up to 130, 140. I just think he's got to take more risks. T20 cricket is about the risk that you're going to take. And I just think, yes, your first 10 balls, if you want to get yourself to 10 or 12, fine, not a problem. But then you've got to have the boundary options. I just think he's got the game and the ability. He's probably just not got the confidence at the minute. But he's just got to try and free himself up, because for New Zealand to win the World Cup, and that's what it's about now, 3 wins away from winning a World Cup. They win the next 3 games, the world champions in T20 cricket. They came very close a year ago. And I don't think they're going to win it without taking risks. And I think the captain can lead by example and take a few more risks. There's a couple of captains that are under debate. You got Kane with New Zealand. You got Temba Bavuma with South Africa. 2 captains that you could necessarily say there's probably more power sitting on the bench that could come in and be more powerful for the team. But, captaincy is more about, can you galvanise your group and can you get them playing to a standard? Can you get them playing the pressure card at the right moments? Well, New Zealand now know that they're going to have to play a little bit more expansively with the bat. I thought England played what has been their trump card in this tournament so far, which is their pace bowlers, which is the Bolt-Southey combination. I thought England played them brilliantly tonight. I think they almost derailed New Zealand in a way that probably they didn't expect that. You don't expect Southey and Bolt to both have iffy nights. Generally one may, but generally never to both have iffy nights. Well, England really targeted that combination, I think, tonight. So I think other teams will follow suit with that. But it's T20 cricket. It's all about risk. And I just think New Zealand, that top three, but particularly Kane, I think he can take more risks early. I think he's a good enough player to do so.
And Joy, just to finish off on this discussion, we know Kane is able to do it. Because in the last T20 World Cup, he wasn't exactly firing on all cylinders. Come the final, yes, they came second best, but he showed what he was capable of.
No, capable, Kane, able, yeah, absolutely. You can go over all the puns, but yeah, I agree with you. I agree that he has the ability to do it. But I think what's very important out here is what Michael's talking about. England were the more desperate team today. And the way they played. So what did they say? They said, this is a wearing pitch. Okay, we have to take our chance. They may be Bolt and Saudi. You have to take our chances against them. But you're not going to get too much in a wearing pitch against the spinners. So what happens? They go hard up front. The spinners still do their job. Ish Sodhi bowls beautifully. Santner bowls beautifully. Look at those numbers, 425, 423. But they know because of that, they have to target Bolt and Saudi. They've gone for 10 and 10.75. And what does that mean? You don't know what's going to happen with the spinners. So you can't do this post facto. You've got to do it then. You've got to do it then and say, I'm going to target these guys because the rate is going to slow down after that. And that's how England reached 180. Had they said, let's play the game situation and see where it goes, this team could have ended up on 160, which at this point in time doesn't look that they could have defended.
Yeah, and it was Hales who took the initiative early on, but the man who really took the game by the scruff of its neck was someone a few questions were being asked about, and maybe just a few whispers, and that was Jos Buttler. Perhaps the timing is right. You're getting to this end of the tournament, as you mentioned, Michael, but with a couple of games to go to qualify for the semi-finals, you couldn't ask for better timing for Jos Buttler to get an innings like that.
No, I mean, it's a good sign when Butler's getting 73 or 47 and we're kind of saying that he's not at his best. That's a good sign. I mean, he had a bit of fortune, a couple of chances went his way, but, you know, I think that's a really good sign. For England to win the World Cup, they need the captain firing with the bat. We highlighted it before the game about his record as a captain and as a batter. It's not quite as good as obviously it was before he was the captain. And you always get those kind of people saying, oh, it's because of the captaincy. I honestly don't think it is. It's just one of those things that happens in T20 cricket. But for him to get those runs, the one thing I'll say, I thought his captaincy was very good at times, but I thought he missed a trick or two with the spinners. I thought he could have been more aggressive and had a slip in place. I think he'd have had a slip in place for Adil, for Liam, and for Moeen Ali. He might have picked up one or two more wickets in that period. You know, when you're on a used pitch and spin is your attack, you know, it's your attacking option. I think you've got to attack with your field. I thought he was quite defensive with his field setting for the spinners. So that's something he can learn from tonight. If you get on another used pitch and it's spinning, I think you can have a slip in place, particularly when the ball's going away from the outside edge of the bat and you know that the batters are going to be driving the ball. That's where a lot of the balls go. The outside edge goes fine and you get chances. So that's one little thing that he could have done a little bit better. But for England to win the World Cup, they need Buttler firing. I'm not saying he was firing tonight with the bat, but he was close. And it's a good sign that he's getting 73 or 47. He's not quite at his best.
Yeah, I think it's something we also said during the IPL, because while he looked invincible, there were innings where he looked completely scratchy for about 10 overs. He hung in there. In fact, till about 15 overs in one innings, I remember. And then he went on to get a big one. I think got 92 or 47 for Rajasthan.
Exactly. I mean, that's the hallmark of a class player, that even on the days you're not in form, you somehow play yourself into form. And players like Buttler require just 10, 15 deliveries to catch up on their run rate, because when they finally get going, they're so devastating that they can easily make it up. And I think that's what Buttler always probably tells himself, okay, fine, I'm getting this thing. I'll get it. Once I get those runs and once my eye is set, I'm going to make up very easily. And I think he did that really well. And I think that's the strength of England. That but just one on a separate note, just to think about somebody like a Michael Vaughan. I mean, you should be in their ears, because you're absolutely right. I mean, so many of those balls went past the slips, went past the keeper. I mean, a couple of catches there, and the game could have been over 5 years, not 5 overs, but definitely as a contest be over 2-3 overs before this.
But I think
I just hope though, you know, when you win a game like that, you know, it's easy to analyse when you lose against Ireland. You know, everyone picked at England of what went wrong. I sometimes think it's better to actually analyse more when you win. You know, so you've won a game, but how could we have won even better? And I just think some of the field settings against the spinner could have been a bit more aggressive, a bit more proactive. You know, you're on a used pitch. It is just offering a bit of grab. So these are the kind of things, and I'm sure the coaching team and the likes of Paul Collingwood, who's obviously an ex-T20 World Cup winner will sit down with Josh, say, oh, what do you reckon? And just have these kind of conversations. It's not being, look, Josh, you must do this, but you've just got to pose the question. Do you think you could have had a slip in for that over against that batter? And that's why you really improve as a captain, just to identify that, yeah, things went really well in this department, but in that little department there, I could have done things slightly just differently and a little bit better for that moment. And that's how you get really, really, really good at a captain, taking feedback from outside, outside of the 11 that are playing. Sometimes when you're in the 11, you get emotionally tied to being out in the middle. Sometimes it's better to ask someone that's just sitting there watching with no emotional ties, just kind of watching the game. So I'm sure he'll sit down with someone and maybe just give him an indication that potentially the odd slip or two could have helped tonight.
Well, Mike Hussey has no emotional ties, does he? He could go and tell them ways a thing or two about how to keep Australia out.
Yeah, you wish.
But in terms of the points table, this is why we say England are comfortably placed, because they've got the net run rate in their favour. New Zealand, of course, are miles ahead, but they still need to win. At the end of the day, New Zealand are going to be playing Ireland first. Then Australia plays Zimbabwe the same night. Afghanistan. Swap around. Australia play Afghanistan the same night. And the next day, England have the advantage of knowing what's happened in these two games, just in case there's an issue of pushing something up. They play Sri Lanka in Sydney on the following day. These are the games that are to follow. And in the other group, that's where the action returns. India return, but they'll be playing second. And first is going to be Zimbabwe taking on the Dutch. This is going to be match number 34 in Group 2. And finally, we're going to see some action from the beautiful Adelaide Oval. Now, it's a lovely part of the world to be in, Adelaide in South Australia, but it's even lovelier when it's a little warm. They've had a severe cold wave. I know it's spring, but it's supposed to be spring leaning towards summer. And the temperature today, I can tell you, was a maximum of 12 and a minimum of 9 degrees. Now, that is not summer in anyone's book. It does improve in about 4 or 5 days' time, but I can tell you right now...
it's warmer here.
Exactly.
It's warmer here.
12 and 9, it's not going to get much warmer by the time India take the field tomorrow night in Adelaide. Maybe a little bit warmer in the daytime when the Dutch play. They'll be used to cooler temperatures. But I think, yes, they are out of the tournament. But it's... Again, let's have a look at the points table before we look at the two teams. This is where they're placed. India will be playing later against Bangladesh. Zimbabwe will be ruining their missed opportunity. They should have really won that game against Bangladesh, and then they would be contenders at 5 points, possibly for pushing for a bizarre semi-final place. South Africa right on top over India. So in terms of the Netherlands, they've actually made it at the expense of maybe a more fancied team. What is it they can get out of this? Because for a team and an associate nation, it's about every minute of gameplay you can get at this highest level.
Look, I think it's 2-3 things. They'll look at themselves, they say they've had a team they have had a very decent team. They've had the kind of team who have had opportunities. I think Max O'Dowd has definitely not given them what you expect out of him. Max O'Dowd, Tom Cooper, Baz Day, Tim Pringle. I mean, I think Mikarin has been a standout performer for them. I think the batting has let them down. And Van der Merwe. So I wouldn't play Van der Merwe in this match because given the situation, I think they're out of the reckoning. Give a young Dutch player a chance to get an opportunity. Van der Merwe was this, grizzled professional who helped get them into the 12. But right now, if you're looking for the future, you're looking to more opportunities. You're looking for a situation where, what is this Dutch team of the future? Who's going to be there? And I think you should be playing the youngsters from here on. Because, with 3 games and all 3 losses, you're looking at that to make up.
Yeah, Michael, it's a team that needs to really express themselves. From the qualifiers up to now, they only have one batter who's got a strike rate of 100 or better, and that is Max O'Dowd. And you'd expect, at least in the qualifying scenario or up to now, that they'd have a couple of others who might have pushed the ante just a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you look at the associate nations, you look at the likes of Scotland, Ireland, that have been playing, obviously, in the World Cup. They play a different brand, probably because they've got more experience. It's just experience with these guys. They don't play enough cricket. I think they're trying to do the right things, but, I think they come up against teams that just, at the minute, are a bit better than them because of the experience that they've had. And it's just a great experience to think that they're going to play at the Adelaide Oval. They've just got to really enjoy every single moment. How many more World Cups will they make? it's down to them to play good cricket to make sure that they keep qualifying. But you just never know. I just think they bring. I like the supporters of the Netherlands. They always bring a load of colour, a load of noise. The players, they are what they are. They're up against it because they're up against better players. But I don't watch them and think they're not trying to do the right thing. I think they're trying to play the right way. They just don't have the quality and they don't have the experience. So these associate teams, they just need more and more opportunities. T20 cricket for me is the format that we need to try and grow in terms of making sure more teams get the opportunity, because it's the one format that you can see more shocks. You can see an Ireland beat England. I think now in 50 over cricket, it's going to be very, very difficult for an associate nation to beat one of the top teams, because 50 overs, you've got more time to get back in the game as a quality team if you have an iffy 15, 20 overs. In T20 cricket, if you have an iffy 10, 15 overs, you're gone. Doesn't matter who you're playing. That's why I really like this format, that it almost brings the divide that little bit closer. And I hope Holland can just produce a performance. I hope they can get a win. I really do. I hope they can go away from the World Cup with a victory, or at least a real close game, to just give them that belief and that energy that playing in a World Cup is great. But you know what? We actually won a game. We won a game at a World Cup. I'd love to see them do that. We've got to remember, in 2009, they beat England in T20 cricket at Lords in that opening game. So it's been done before. But I just think now, 13 years later, some of these teams have just moved on so much. They're so good. That's why we need more of these associates getting more opportunities. And I think T20 cricket is the way for the associate nations to get more involved with the game.
Yeah, that was a crazy night in London. I was there in 2009 and there was celebrations throughout London. The pubs were painted orange and they were just loving every bit of that upset. But as Michael said, even the bigger teams have gone even further up. They've gone stronger. And for them to pick up a consolation win would be good. Paul van Meekeren shone with the ball, but quick word on Bas de Leede. It was a lovely moment after he got hit by Harris Rauf. Rauf came to him at the end of the game and said, "You can only get stronger." We hope he's got stronger and we hope he'll be able to take the field.
Yeah, he must. I mean, I've been the son of Tim de Leede, who was a legend in Dutch cricket. Bas de Leede is that quintessential all-rounder. And I think what also happens is, if you'll see the associate nations, a lot of their top players are all-rounders, because they're only, they have only 3-4 really decent players, and those players are expected to do everything. So you'll see a far greater proportion of all-rounders out there, and I think they do it. The other person I am a bit disappointed with, given the fact that he's played so much Big Bash cricket, under-19 cricket for Australia, Tom Cooper has not come through the way they would, given the fact that these are almost home conditions for him. There was a time when he was regarded as an Australia prospect. He was that close, and now he's, got this opportunity. Somewhere we thought, we'd get more out of him. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. It's one of those things.
Yeah. Sydney-born Tom Cooper, a lot was expected of him. Maybe this could be the day against Zimbabwe in the first of those two games. But as far as Zimbabwe are concerned, they've also provided moments. That shock victory over Pakistan certainly has been one of the talking points of this tournament. And they've had lots of good individual performances. And the story, of course, has been Sikandar Raza. But you can't expect him to turn up every single game and do it every single time.
No, absolutely. You have Craig Irvine and Sean Williams. I mean, they're terrific players, And what's happening is this kind of bounce really suits the bowlers with, even Perth, Blessing Muzarabani, that kind of length. And I think you've seen a lot of batsmen found out, because if you see, the last 2-3, big tournaments have been played in Asian conditions, where bounce is not so much of a factor. Now you've come to Australia and suddenly the Zimbabwe looks like a completely different transformed attack. You take the same attack and have them in the UAE where the ball barely rises here, and Blessing is not the same bowler. But out here, they're a threat. Chatara, Nagare and Blessing Muzarab.
And Brad Evans bowling that final over against Pakistan.
Oh, absolutely amazing.
Yep. What has impressed you the most, Michael, about the Zimbabwe side? I know we talk a lot about that Pakistan game, but in general, they came through the qualifiers and they also look to be punching above their weight against the big boys.
Yeah, well organised. I think Davey Houghton's done a tremendous job. I just think they look well drilled, well organised. Those tall bowlers getting the bounce. Obviously, as Joy mentioned, in Australia, it really suits them. I'll be interested to see what happens at the Adelaide Oval, because it's probably one of the venues that it doesn't bounce as much. It sometimes plays more like a subcontinent wicket. Probably not with the weather that they've seen there today, but also the square of the wicket boundaries are shorter. They're a bit bigger now because of the transformation of the game, but they're still shorter compared to some of the venues. So actually bowling into the wicket, the pull shot, you go into the stand at the Adelaide Oval. So I'll be interested to see how they can change their lengths and their lines for the conditions that they're going to have to play in tomorrow. But that win against Pakistan and the celebrations that we saw on social media at the Harare Sports Club was fantastic. And they nearly won the next game, came 3 runs light of the game against Bangladesh. So they're competing. That's what you want. You get to the World Cup and you get to this stage of the tournament. And that's what Netherlands will be disappointed that they haven't really competed yet. And you want to compete. You want to push the big boys. You want to win again. They beat Pakistan. And you want to get out there in the middle every single match and just try and put the opposition under pressure. And I think Zimbabwe, whatever happens, and also finishing that top 4. If you can finish in that top 4, you know what happens. You're in the next World Cup. So there's so much to play for. I love that rule. I love that rule that this World Cup has an impact on the next World Cup in terms of qualification. It just gives you something to play for right till the end of the group stages. If that wasn't the case, you could find 1 or 2 teams who lose a few games, just throw the towel in. There's no point in playing. But I'd really enjoy that rule that they finish in the top 4. And that's what they have to aim for. That's what their goal is, finishing that top 4 and make sure that they're in 2024.
I mean, just imagine if they had beaten Bangladesh, which they were so close to doing. They would have been on 5. They beat Netherlands as they should. They get to 7. And they come up against India, sitting on 7 points, with India at that point in time, possibly after beating Bangladesh, would have been on 6. So they would have been ahead of India on points with that final game. And if South Africa then lose to Pakistan, then Zimbabwe are a serious contender of making it to the semis.
Yeah, it's those 2-3 balls against Bangladesh. That's basically what's decided their fate. And it's amazing how close. And exactly, I mean, just 6 months to a year back, Zimbabwe cricket was regarded as finished. The great teams that we've seen from Zimbabwe, from Kevin Curran, Tom Curran's father, Tom and Sam Curran's father, Duncan Fletcher, those teams. Finally, all those teams are over, and you had a brief period with heat streak. There's some of
the team in the '99 World Cup.
Yeah, '99 World Cup, which beat us actually in beat India. From there onwards, it's been really that Zimbabwe team no longer looked like it was. These last 6 months, you've seen the transformation again. And absolutely, Dave Houghton is the man who's changed it. The man who scored their first ever Test century. He's the man who's turned it on. And I think he's brought a certain amount of discipline. And if you see their celebrations, there's one thing about celebrating after a game, but you see they enjoy each other's company as a team. And I think that's a big part of playing cricket together, especially in tournaments like this, where you know that almost all the team, you're punching way above your weight when you come to the Super 12. To enjoy the game, to have a good time, I think Zimbabwe's been fantastic. They've been one of the stories of this World Cup for me.
Yeah, I liked Sikandar Raza's post-match comment after he was asked, I think it was the last over against Pakistan, and he was said, at what stage did you believe you could do this? And he said, before the first ball was bowled. Simple as that. The belief has got to be there throughout. Doesn't mean it has to suddenly start believing because you're ahead in a particular game. But I just feel they will rue that game against Bangladesh, because they could seriously have been in contention for a top 4 spot. That would have been pretty much like Kenya in the 2003 World Cup, getting to the last 4 against India in South Africa. But that's as far as Zimbabwe and the Netherlands are concerned. The one all eyes will be on as the chill sets in, as a single digit set in to the lovely Adelaide Oval, will be the second match of the day as India take on Bangladesh, who will be buoyed to a certain extent by that victory against Zimbabwe. Not doing too much for their chances, but certainly an India-Bangladesh encounter, always a bit of spice, no matter where.
Absolutely. There is a bit of spice. There's a lot of, Nidhi Cup stories, a lot of stories, games in Dhaka. I think this got a lot of spice. At this point in time, I think India has, in these conditions, far more firepower than them. I don't think, other than Taskin Ahmed, this is a team that's really suited to these conditions. But it's Bangladesh, and they're an experienced side, and they really need somebody else to perform. I feel Afif Hussain is giving them something. I feel Taskin is giving them something. Mustafizur has been absolutely sensational for them. They need a little more from their batting. Their top order batsmen have to give them a bit more.
Yeah, something they've also done, Michael, is their ground fielding has been excellent. And that's one area they've stood out. There have been situations in the past where they've looked shoddy, but I think that's led the way for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been excellent in the field, created a few run out themselves with their kind of combinations in the outfield. It's a must in T20 cricket. If you can control one thing, you can control your fielding. You can become a very, very good fielding side. Doesn't matter whether you're an associate nation, the top team in the world. The one thing that you can really control, and what a lot of the coaches try and really work on his fielding. You look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's fielding in this World Cup's been atrocious. It's probably cost them. Oh, I dread to think how many runs it's cost them. You look at the drop catches today. You look at Josh Butler going down twice, relatively straightforward. The second one, the first one from Kane Williamson, quite difficult. Moeen Ali's drop catch. So in an era where, everyone's fitter, everyone moves better, I don't know what joy that. I still think there's more drop catches in this era than probably ever has been. And I can't understand that. I mean, I was terrible. I couldn't catch it. I couldn't catch a cold, but I still think we see a lot of drop catches in this era of the game. When you think of the training that these guys get, all the machines, the ball flies out of this machine at 100 mile an hour, like this every morning. And the technical side of the analysts in terms of video and the techniques about catching, which we never had. You're basically just, if you couldn't catch, you just couldn't catch. You just can't catch, you're rubbish. Whereas now they really work on the technical side. So I'm staggered how many catches still go down. I know it's the game, it's human beings and it's natural error, but there's a lot of, you look at the catches that go down, it's not the really difficult catches. There's a lot of straightforward catches in this era of going down. That can only be concentration. That's all it is. It must be just concentration or pressure, switching off, because all these players are, they're practicing hour after hour catching balls. And that's I don't know what Joy thinks. I do think this era, it's certainly an era where you see more agility in the outfield. You see probably more incredible catches. The catches over the boundary flicking about. You see those pretty much every other game now, and we're always amazed by it. But it's just a common trend. But in terms of dollies that go down and general straightforward catches, I think more go down in this era than ever.
Maybe that's the key to it, what Michael just said. I mean, they actually practice those catches. Those don't happen by accident. Yeah. The one where you jump outside, toss the ball in and catch it. Maybe the guys who give the catches don't offer dollies. So you've forgotten how to take a dolly. You know how to take the tough ones.
It's a great theory. I mean, we tell them, at least practice 10 dollies, easy ones. Just let the players concentrate till the ball hits their hand. I think a lot of these times, people have already assumed they've taken the catch. And I think that's the whole part of it.
But coming back to Bangladesh, a comment from Shakib Al Hassan, who says he admits that India are here to win the World Cup. And he said that we are not here to win the World Cup. We're here to play against India. We're here to create an upset.
Shakib is a canny customer. And if you look, Shakib in that 2019 World Cup was sensational. But I think 50-over cricket, I think, is more his format. He batted at number 3. He really did well. I mean, he had fantastic performances. I think 20 overs is not something that suits him. But if you remember the start, before this tournament, he put up his hand. He wanted to be captain. He came out here and he's been disappointed himself. Personally, his personal form. With the ball, he always gives you a certain amount, but he's not given you what he normally gives you. With the bat, he's given you nothing at all. And I think this is the match he needs to change that if Bangladesh has to have any kind of a chance. They have to lead from the front. Him and Litton, the senior cricketers, have to perform.
They've got to have a few moments of brilliance, Michael. I mean, Shakib got the run out against Zimbabwe that really turned the match right at that crux moment. Otherwise, we'd have been looking at Zimbabwe being a possible contender. We had Ben Stokes taking that solitary wicket today, getting Kane Williamson out, again, a key moment. So big players got to stand up and be a little bigger than the rest if they are to consider an upset against India.
Yeah, absolutely. You need your experience really to beat an Indian side, but India are on the back of a loss. So all the pressure's on India. If I was Bangladesh and in that dressing room, I'm saying, look, just give it a red hot go. Go and be risky. Go and take them on, because there's only one team here that's going to be nervous. Because we're not expected to win. So go and play with the freedom. Go and play with a fearless approach. Go and put India under pressure. India I don't think India have played anything like. I know it was a brilliant win against Pakistan because of Virat Kohli. You look at the way that they played against the Netherlands. I don't think they've played really aggressively with the bat against the Netherlands. And then what happened against South Africa? So I think India, if you're ever going to beat them, they're there for the taking. I really do. I think India can be beaten. Bangladesh, have they got enough mentality in that dressing to believe that? That's the only thing I'd question. Do they have the real belief that they can arrive tomorrow to beat India? Can they suddenly find those mentality vibes of arriving at the Adelaide Oval? Come on, let's get stuck into India and have a real go at being aggressive, being positive. Can 2 or 3 of us step up and have a great day out? If we can, we can put India under pressure. And if they can arrive with that mentality, I really do think India are there for the taking.
Very interesting point that Michael makes. And I must just add here, trying to get a feel from having been at those 3 India games in Melbourne, in Sydney and in Perth. while there were lots of celebrations, lots of wild celebrations because you beat Pakistan, you have to celebrate. But exactly what Michael said is what a lot of the knowledgeable Indian fans, when they were walking out, especially in Perth, were saying that we're all behind India, we all love India, but let's not forget, Pakistan, we just about won. Against Netherlands, we didn't steamroll them, especially in the batting department. And of course, South Africa, we lost. So it's not quite the India who are just marching in. They just happen to have the points on the board.
Yeah, they're a good team. I don't think they're an outstanding team at this stage of the tournament. I think if you look at form-wise, they're not quite there. Some strange decisions. Deepak Hooda playing this particular match, where do you bring him in? Does Dinesh Karthik play? What is the word on Dinesh Karthik? Is he injured? Is he not? Does Rishabh Pant come in? What is the word from the dressing room? Is there any word from there?
Well, we have heard that he was out in training. So there is a feeling that he is likely to play. But one reckons that at least when you have someone like a Rishabh Pant in standby, you won't get that kind of finishing that you would with DK. But with two proper keepers in there, at least you know that there's Rishabh Pant to step in as he did for a few overs with the gloves.
No, absolutely. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that do they go through with Ashwin? Finger spinner Ashwin. Chahal hasn't got a run in as yet. Does he get a run in? Aksar, does he come back? So there are a lot of questions out here. I mean, I think the people who have performed, I think Arshdeep has been absolutely outstanding for them. I think Hardik has given them something. Virat, definitely. Rohit and KL Rahul, big question marks out there. Neither has given anything in this tournament so far. And if India has to, again, we're looking at it, I think Michael summed it up perfectly. Any team from here on basically needs to win 3 consecutive matches. Whoever's won 3 consecutive matches has won this tournament. And does India have it? If they have to win 3 consecutive matches, those 3 must fire.
For India, it's 4 now.
Yeah, for India, it's 4.
Zimbabwe, semi-final, final.
Yeah, that's true actually. Bangladesh, Zimbabwe. But if India wins 3 of those 4 matches, one of those first 2, I think they should be reasonably there. With 6 points, I think they should be through.
Well, really expected to beat both these teams, Michael. But just in terms of team selection, the DK factor obviously is dependent on his injury. Do you see any need for any possible shuffling over there? Because the pace bowlers, I know Harshal Patel would put his hand up. Chahal hasn't had a look in. But the 3 who have, Shami, Bhuvaneshwar and Arshdeep, have done the job.
And I like Rishabh. And I'm amazed that India have not maximised what Rishabh can bring in T20 cricket. I just don't think they've utilised him as yet. But in India's kind of camp, I never really worry about the selection. I worry about their approach. And I just feel with the bat in hand, they're allowing the opposition to settle. When you've got a batting lineup that's got, it's plenty of depth, plenty of players down the back end. I just think that opening combination has to go out in the first over to attack. Try and put the opposition under pressure by hitting a 2 or 3 boundaries in those first 2 overs. I just feel, you look at the start of the South Africa game, a maiden. No real intent of putting the opposing bowler under pressure. It was like, we'll leave a couple, then we'll try. Nothing really happened. You can't wait for the bad ball. You've got to go and force the bowler to bowl a bad ball in T20 cricket by playing risky. You're not going to win a World Cup by playing safe. All the teams have to realise that. I mean, England are the side that really, in white ball cricket, is the benchmark because they play when they're at the best, they play an ultra-aggressive game. And I just think India, for too long in T20 cricket, have almost played too safe. I think they can be more aggressive. I think that opening combination should be sent out. Rohit's an incredible player. KL, incredible player. Get out there and hit boundaries. Get out there. There's only 2 fielders outside the circle. They've got the game, they've got the power, they've got the skill. Whoever's bowling at those 2, I can guarantee is not looking forward to it. They're not standing at the end of their mark going, this is great, I'm bowling it to Rohit Sharma. They're petrified because it's Rohit Sharma. But I look at the way that those 2 are starting, it's almost like they're petrified of the bowler. They've got to be more aggressive and they've got to be playing with more intent to put India right on the front foot from the first over. Get on the attack. Get in some boundaries. If they do that, and they can because they're good enough, India can win the World Cup. If they don't change that approach and go out with a real mentality of being aggressive, I can't see how they win the World Cup.
Well, it's not a bad run-up if you really were to see the way things happen. Obviously, you wouldn't have the loss against South Africa would hurt. But to have Zimbabwe and Bangladesh to finish with, that Zimbabwe game, by all rights, should have been the West Indies. Yeah, and that would have been a completely different kettle of fish, no matter what.
Yeah. Look, I think the draw has been good to India. They also have a chance of 2 relatively matches where they can experiment a bit more than they normally could have. But it's time they get the combination right. But again,
I'll stop you there. When you say experiment, wouldn't you rather just say, listen, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to tamper. Rahul Dravid's given his vote of confidence to his namesake. We just want KL Rahul to express himself, as Michael said, and be the KL Rahul we know by the time the semi-final comes around.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with Michael. The main problem is in the approach of the batting team rather than the actual team composition. Because whatever the team composition, there are 7 really good bats out there. There's 7 really good batters out there. But what I'm trying to figure out is, what are they looking for from Deepak Hooda? What is it that they expect him to do that Rishabh Pant can't do? Especially given that Rishabh Pant gives you that left-handed option as well. So what is it that they're expecting out of him? That's one of the questions that I definitely ask and say that, is it 3 overs, a couple of overs spin? I mean, it's not really that they could use him very much. So I think that's the one question I'd ask myself. I'd definitely look at, if you're going to play Deepak Hooda, I'd definitely look at playing Rishabh Pant. If they go back to Akshar Patel, I can understand that. But I feel under these circumstances, if Hardik Pandya is giving you those 3-4 overs with the ball, maybe you can do in some circumstances without Akshar Patel. The team has gone with Akshar. Do they stay with Ashwin? Those 2-3 players out there, and I'm not saying that those necessarily change the approach of how this team will play. But I think there are still some questions left about the composition which have not been settled by the Indian dressing room.
Well, the feeling is, Michael, and we'll have the final word on this in terms of the Indian team composition, is that yes, they changed it up for that game against South Africa, but would normal service be resumed? The one other interesting way they were using Akshar or thinking of Akshar as a left-hander somewhere in the middle there, which is what they don't have enough of, because Rishabh Pant is not playing.
Yeah, I just think it's imperative that you have that combination of asking the opposing team a question or two. Like in Brisbane tonight, you knew that there was a short side. So if you've got a left and right hand combination as a captain, you've got one player that you're really worried about every single over. Now, if you've just got 2 right-handers, you're getting an over in between every over that, you just bowl to the big side. So I think it's so important that when you're creating the side, and I do think a lot of it's mentality, and India are good enough with those right-handers to put 180 plus on the scoreboard on any pitch with the mindset right. But if they can have a left-hander in there, I'll keep going about Rishabh Pant. I just don't think they've utilised Rishabh at all in T20 cricket. I just think he's so good. He just needs someone to sit with him and just give him, and I'm sure Ricky Ponting has it at Delhi, the freedom to just go out and play and make mistakes. Because that's what it's about. It's about the risk. And if you're willing to allow a player like Rishabh to get out in silly ways, it's dangerous because he'll then just free himself up. If he's thinking about, if I make a risk of, and get criticised for it, which I do feel for a lot of the Indian players because they get more criticism because of the amount of support that they have than any other country in the world. So I can imagine the pressure that they're under, but I just don't think they're utilising such a talent, and that left-hander in the middle could be so dangerous for India. Let's see what they go with tomorrow, but left-hand, right-hand combinations are so, particularly when spin is on, and spin will come more and more into it as the tournament progresses. I just think if they can somehow fit him in that middle, it'll certainly help India ask the opposing captain a lot more questions.
Well, it may be an issue that they don't need to actually have a selector doing. It could just be the injury to Dinesh Karthik that gets Rishabh Pant the opportunity. For now, just one question remains unanswered, and that was posed a long while ago, and we repeated it once. Joy, take it away.
Okay, this specific record has been achieved by 7 Indians, 5 batters, RP Singh and R. Ashwin. What achievement! And this is Test cricket, player of the match on Test debut. And the only 2 bowlers to get it are Ashwin and RP Singh. The rest of them are all batsmen. Of course, the last batters, the last, of course, being Shreyas Iyer, and the one before him being Prithvi Shaw, then before that was Shikhar Dhawan. So a lot of batters have done it. These are the bowlers who've done it.
Well, there you go. Player of the match on Test match debut. Who was the match, or who was the man or woman who picked it up? And it is Rohit Sutrave, IMS Rohit 18. Well done for being the first to pick it up. We had quite a few answers, and he was the first. So congratulations to him. We've had a couple of games today. The groups are set up beautifully, and we're looking forward to, we won't be feeling the chill. The players certainly will be. The crowds will be from Adelaide. Doubleheader coming up, but we're going to be there half an hour before the start of the first game at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we'll see you throughout the day and look ahead to India playing Bangladesh. For now, from Michael, Joy and myself, that's all we have on Cricbuzz Live.